And this is one of the fallacies, incorrect interpretations of the scenario, the world we live in. Like, well, if I can't prove A to equal B, therefore A must not equal B. Let's just say taking fish oils happen to actually be as awesome for your cholesterol as statin drugs, which I don't think is the case. If it was, for the sake of this discussion, but I can't prove it. I have not been able to prove it to be true. And we just talked about why. It's not going to be funded. Then therefore, it can't help your cholesterol. That is a huge fallacy. Look, we're not saying that because you can't prove A to equal B, that turns around and means that A does equal B. We're not saying that. We're just saying, okay, we can't prove A equals B, but that doesn't mean it can't be a possibility. Let's think with the fact that it might be true and operate with that when we make our medical decisions.
What do we have to look forward to in the near future, do you think, with promoting holistic treatments?
My gosh, I mean, you know,
Americans need to know that we're on the precipice of what might be the literal biggest change of American healthcare in history. And this is exciting, it's revolutionary, and we should definitely start with a video that you created, what was it, a week ago?
Yeah, literally.
Right, talking about this that got banned within a few minutes of us actually posting it. And this is going to give everyone listening a really good idea of what we've been facing and struggling with for the last 10 years, but also what's in store for the future, right?
100%. This video, guys, got banned and labeled as misinformation. Enjoy.
Are you guys smelling it? Are you smelling a change in healthcare coming? Let me read this tweet, guys. RFK Jr. recent tweet: FDA's war on public health is about to end. This includes its aggressive suppression of psychedelics, peptides, stem cells, raw milk, hyperbaric therapies, chelating compounds, ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, vitamins, clean food, sunshine, exercise, nutraceuticals, and anything else that advocates human health and can't be patented by pharma. Oh, that like hits me in my soul, gets me worked up.
This gets the people going.
If you work for the FDA and are part of this corrupt system, I have two messages for you. Number one, preserve your records. Number two, pack your bags.
All of you, pack your bags and go.
Oh, man. Oh, I think that message says it all on its own. I'm excited for this change. I'm going to keep politics out of it, but with RFK's involvement and his passion for preserving any sense of what healthcare should be, and his relentlessness to fight adversity, corruption, to quote him specifically, I feel a hell of a lot better than I did 6 months ago. Tell me what you guys think. Are you excited for this change, for RFK's movements? Do you agree with me when I say RFK is this is nonpartisan? I don't care what side you lean on. I want to keep politics out of it. This is healthcare. This is all sides. Tell me what you guys think in the comments. We'll see you later.
Ooh, oh man, it gets me worked up just watching myself talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, take me back to that video, but more interestingly, I want to know if you can recall the very first time that you were blocked or essentially scrubbed from your online presence for more or less speaking the truth.
Yeah. I mean, that wasn't the first time, unfortunately. We had our TikTok account, the entire account, permanently banned back in July of 2023. So about a year and a half ago. And there was actually a couple accounts. It was all GLP-1 related accounts, just randomly on July 4th in the morning, all banned. Like, come on. Just being told that we violated some obscure consumer trade policy. The only thing that was in common between all the accounts is they were talking about GLP-1 medications, you know?
And it was, what was the actual warning? Was it promoting unsafe dietary habits or something like that?
No, that one was actually interesting. They called it a violation of consumer trades and goods. This is like your gun policy, your guns and firearms and consumer goods. That policy, talking about guns and firearms, obviously, but then the consumer goods, now you look at that, you go, okay, well, we are talking about medications, but the policy doesn't say you can't talk about medication. So what did we violate? Of course, all they refer you to is this long, obscure legal document that you can't make any sense of. You can read the words, but you can't make any sense of how they took those rules and decided that these accounts violated them. It was bullshit. Just like the recent video too as well, labeling this as misinformation. All I did was literally read the tweet that RFK posted. It really, like you said, and I'll let you really paint the picture for us, but these acts of censorship really are prime examples of the problem. Censorship
Mhm.
being one huge, but even more than that. I mean, this all boils down to a great nation that was found off of the best principles, better than any other country, right? That was the whole
Mhm.
premise of the American Constitution, and we're going to do it right this time, and yada yada yada. And history is not my expertise, but I think we had that going for us for quite some time, and you know, capitalism and greed just took over. You know.
Yeah, and that's why I'm excited to hit on the subject today. And for those who don't know, the world of holistic health, the world of any non pharmaceutical treatment, and it goes beyond medicine. I mean, regardless of your political side, whatever side of the aisle you're on, there were even podcasters on certain sides that couldn't get their voice out and were suppressed just for speaking their mind. I mean, whether or not it was the truth, nobody should really be suppressed just for talking because the powers that be in that moment don't agree with whatever you have to say. And for those who don't know, we are talking about RFK and what he's about to do, but this is not a political discussion. No one listening should feel aligned or misaligned based off what we're talking about, because at the end of the day, this is health. This is everyone. This isn't red. This isn't blue. And I did earlier today go through essentially everything that RFK has been proposing. And I was able to whittle it down into four essential subcategories. One would be he wants a complete overhaul of the federal health agencies. Two, he's actually getting, or he's trying to promote holistic medicine. Number three, addressing corporate capture and the fact that some of these companies are responsible for being the watchdogs of themselves. And number four, removing harmful additives from food. But just to start with the first one, RFK is planning on trying to eliminate all forms of corporate corruption, all the way from the FDA to the nutrition departments to all realms of public health. And what he's really trying to do is reduce the harmful, influential impact of pharmaceutical companies. And what I mean by that is they are responsible right now for 70% of all news media advertising. They essentially control what you can and cannot say on platforms like YouTube and TikTok. And because of this, people like Dr. Berg, who at the time had, I believe, 12 million followers, his videos were suppressed because they were quote unquote unhealthy or unsafe. He really doesn't know because he never got an answer. And in the face of all of this, you have someone who is willing to flip it on its head. And the reason that's so important is because give the audience some examples of things that you cannot say today, right now, things that if you recorded them and claimed them to be true, you would get banned for. Just to give the audience an example.
Oh, I can almost guarantee that if I made a video talking about times in history when pharmaceutical companies were found for flat out corrupt acts, specifically altering data to and obscuring data and results to get certain medications approved via these the processes they have to go through. So straight up altering data, which should be a federal offense and crime on the highest level because millions could possibly suffer from these sort of acts. The punishment was just a fine. Like, it doesn't even make sense to me. If any small company did that, if any medium company did that, anybody that doesn't have the kind of money that Big Pharma does, they're going to jail. Like, you're going to jail, as you should, because to me that's like I said, the research is done for the necessary highest level of safety that can possibly be earned on these medications, and there's an entire approval process. But when you introduce the element of greed and allow it to, because greed is always going to exist. You can't stop greed. But when you allow greed to influence the data, which is flat out been already proven in court to have taken place more than once, multiple times, well, what else is happening? How much is in the realm of what we don't know that actually happened? You're going to sit there and tell me, well, it was only these times. The only times our hands were in the cookie jar was the times that you found me and you slapped my hand and got me and I paid the fine. I gave you back 3 cookies. That's it. No other times, though, have I done this. Like, hello? So I think, to me, that's the biggest one. That without a doubt, that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
What this is going to do is also open the doors and the floodgates for actual funding for testing of what happens when you give society or your control group fish oil for 3 months under controlled settings. Does it actually have a positive effect on cholesterol, on LDL, on HDL? What do you think will happen when they do hand over the keys to allow for these studies to be performed in the realm of holistic treatment?
Yeah, I mean, this is massive. I want to just talk about this before I even talk about my opinions of what's going to result. Just the problem, I don't think people still, I mean, we've been saying it over and over and over, but I don't think you can say it enough. Now is the best time to say it so that you understand why it's going to be so different. So, I can understand why it's easy to space out when people talk about these kind of things, because it's like you're talking about problems that aren't going to be solved. So why would I? Mm-hmm. That's a fair statement, right? Like, yeah, I'm passionate and, yada, 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 I'll support you. But do I really give a shit when you're talking about a problem that you can't solve yourself? It's difficult. But now I'm telling you guys, the problem appears to be solved. I should say the roadblock to the solving of the problem, the massive boulder has been lifted. So now we're just watching the solution about to start to take place. So that hopefully gets you excited. And now maybe I'll have your attention so that you can understand the problem here, so that then we'll go with where I think it's going to end up. But we live in a world of research-based medicine, which is absolutely important. And the fundamental aspect of research to allow us to draw conclusions so that we can then apply those conclusions to life, because we are talking about medicine, a form of healthcare, pharmaceuticals, which have dire consequences, have toxic levels, lower toxic levels relative to things like peptide therapies and hormone therapies, which are also very powerful too as well. And don't get me wrong, we all know that Dr. Jones has said this multiple times, pharmaceutical agents have saved millions of lives. So I'm not anti-pharmaceuticals at all. I'm just anti a shitty, corrupt narrative behind their use. That's what I'm anti. The problem being that we've relied so heavily on the data to get us where we've gotten, it's now the very thing that's being used against us being the realm of people who are like, what about the fish oil? What about the fasting? What about all the other alternative therapies, which get called CAMs? You'll hear the term CAMs, complementary alternative medicine. Complementary, alternative, right? Even that name is just already puts it into like it's not the real thing. It can't be the real thing. It's complementary. When you have research, the highest level research being, so if we look at the hierarchy of research, your case studies, your anecdotal studies, then you move up the hierarchy of trials, phase 1, phase 2. Then we have at the top these randomized controlled trials with multiple phases of the study. You have the highest level of accuracy, but they're also extremely expensive. And so because they're so cost prohibitive to the majority of basically non-monstrous and massive funded companies, right? Pharmaceutical companies are the only ones for the most part, because we don't have any equally powerful holistic companies. It's a massive industry, don't get me wrong, but it's not in the hands of a handful of companies. No, it's dispersed among multiple small companies. And so nobody has the interest in even though, let me rephrase that. Everybody has the interest, but no one has the money to pay for this research. If we're trying to have a scenario where we can actually compare CAMs to standard medicines, then it would only be fair that the same amount of research was done on CAMs versus pharmaceuticals. But it's not. It doesn't happen. It never happens. It rarely happens. Or the level of research that does happen is much lower. It's really easy. And this is one of the fallacies, incorrect interpretations of the scenario, the world we live in. It goes back to that, like, well, if I can't prove A to equal B, if I can't prove that, therefore A must not equal B. If I can't prove that fish oils are as efficacious for statins, this is not what I'm trying to say, I believe, guys, but just for example, an easy example, let's just say taking fish oils happen to actually be as awesome for your cholesterol as statin drugs, which I don't think is the case. But if it was, for the sake of this discussion, but I can't prove it. I have not been able to prove it to be true. And we just talked about why. It's not going to be funded. Then therefore, it can't help your cholesterol. That's the fallacy. Because I can't prove it to be true, it must be false. And that is a fallacy. That is a huge fallacy that has dire consequences. Look, we're not saying that because you can't prove A to equal B, that turns around and means that A does equal B. We're not saying that. No. Because that would be just as equally of a fallacy as the original situation. We're not saying that. We're just saying, okay, we can't prove A equals B, but that doesn't mean it can't be a possibility. Let's think with the fact that it might be true and operate with that when we make our medical decisions, because that's what we're looking at. I'm a DC, I'm a doctor of chiropractic, but medical practitioners are always supposed to be doing what's best for the patient. It's a practice of medicine, recommending therapies and solutions, looking at the available data. What's the safest play? So that is another huge variable, because when we're talking about therapies that are potentially dangerous and life-threatening, you better have research to say it's safe, because if you don't, you can't just, well, I think it might work and I think it's safe, so let me just throw that at you. We know we can't do that because medications can kill you. And they almost always do in those scenarios where they're just randomly thrown and they're not researched. But we take a step back and we're looking at things like fish oil, some intermittent fasting, some sunlight in the morning. Are we really concerned that if we threw some of those things at people without proving that A equals B, that we're going to have some fatalities? Like, come on, people.
You need to prove to me that morning sunlight isn't fatal before I allow you to do it.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing, right? That's the guys, these practitioners. And,
I wanted to interrupt this show for a minute and let you guys know about the new YouTube subscription program that we have. This is direct access into the FLOA Academy membership, my private community, which is hosted on Mighty Networks. If you guys want to be connected to me, if you want to have more access, the community is amazing. We have thousands of individuals who are all kicking ass right now, implementing the FLOA protocol and implementing my guidance to make sure that they use these medications correctly. It's $27 a month, and you can join right now by clicking that subscription button on your YouTube page. Now, back to the show.
The very way that these medical doctors, I'm sure you saw that bit from Dr. Casey. She just came out and just unleashed on her being a Harvard-trained physician and all the things that she did not get in her schooling. So these doctors, the school themselves, the American Medical Association, I'm sure at one point trained their physicians with the goal in mind of what's best for patients. But over time, the American Medical Association's curriculum has been influenced heavily to feed the narrative that if it's not a drug or a surgery, well, you get my point. And I can't, I have to, even this podcast goes on YouTube, which, Trump's orders and RFK's things are not in action yet. So I'm going to stop right there. And but I think that's such an important thing to understand. So now you have the background story. You understand why this is so crazy, why this is such a huge thing. Now that, like based off what you said earlier, is something that we can say is no longer going to be the case, right? In effect, if I'm understanding this correctly from what you could tell, John, you tell me that now we're actually going to have funding, governmental funding for said studies, so that we can actually compare head-to-head these CAMs to drug-based therapies. That's what I'm walking away. I mean, truthfully, we don't know the answer, but that's what I think.
Listen to this. That I want to hear your response, because that brings me to part number 2, which is RFK's promotion of holistic and preventative medicine. And I wrote it down. I'll read it. He believes that much of America's chronic disease epidemic is fueled by poor diet, environmental toxins, and over-reliance on pharmaceuticals. That right there, if you made a TikTok video and posted it tomorrow, I'm 50% sure you'd be banned.
I can't say that. Nope.
Yeah, maybe 90% sure. So he is suggesting that we reallocate resources towards preventative and holistic treatment. But what is mind-blowing is proposing that one half of NIH's research be redirected to alternative medicine and integrating all of this into mainstream medicine. And when I read that, I legitimately got the chills, because I think of caller Emily, who is pre-diabetic and is told to get on some metformin. And then 3 to 5 years later is told to get on some insulin. And then when they're highly inflamed or atherosclerotic or need blood, whatever it is, right? 10 years later, they're on 3 more medications, when they could have been told in the very beginning, do some light keto or Mediterranean. Hey, have you ever heard of intermittent fasting? And saved years of quality of life, years of cost of medication. I mean, I won't get into that because I'll get frustrated, but you get my point. The ability to equip the American public with the knowledge that they need when they've been told false truths for so long. This is monumentous. And now that you're talking about it, what do you think is, what do we have to look forward to in the near future, do you think, with what he wants to do promoting holistic treatments?
My gosh. I mean, a couple things kind of came to mind with just thinking about the magnitude of all this, and we don't have time to get into all of it. I mean, the so just the cost of goods, and this is probably not even in the same topic, right? But that kind of came to mind because it relates to the over reliance on medications. Well, part of the over reliance on medications, one aspect is that everybody's getting sick. Why is everybody getting sick? Because a lot of people are eating toxic, low quality, low nutrient dense food. Organic food is like 3 to 4 times the price. It's just out of the scenario for most people, especially when we have a simultaneous problem with wealth, and the discrepancy of wealth is a whole nother problem. And I'm not a financial specialist by any means, but it doesn't take a financial specialist to notice that if you've been alive on this planet for more than 40 years, you can see the discrepancy in wealth and the fact that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poor, which is just a whole other problem. But it relates to this because as there's a movement in the middle class, organic foods are just not a reality. And so why are organic foods so much more expensive? I'm not saying organic food should be the same price, although ultimately, let me rephrase that. I do think they should be the same price. In fact, I think they should be the standard, but that's super far down the line. And, because that would, I mean, I'm not even going to go there. I don't have enough time, but I do want people to know on the table, organic should be the only option. One step at a time. Let's not get crazy here, Just bringing the cost down for organic would be amazing. And that starts at the top. When you think of the funding that the government does to subsidize the agricultural department and the amount of funding and support that goes into grains and
all grain and dairy, right?
All grain and dairy.
For people listening, look up the United States stockpile of thousands of tons of cheese, which literally fed the economy. I won't get into that one. Me and you will talk about that one day, but we subsidize federally what we can make money on, not as what is healthy for the public.
100%.
And you break it down, it's that simple.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And so, I mean, that alone, just driving the cost down of higher quality food so that more of your average Americans, income wise, unfortunately, it still won't be everybody, because I don't think we're at that point where it's going to be the same price or we're just going to get rid of the other. That's in the future. So at least we're allowing more people to eat more nutrient dense, less toxic filled food. But even just the widespread implications of the cultural acceptance that food is actually better, because even today, the grasp that big pharma's influence and media has over the public is that people even question the efficacy of even putting money into that food. Doctors will tell people, yeah, don't waste your money on the fish oil, or don't waste your money on the organic stuff. It's not proven. If you truthfully didn't think there was any corruption in the system, that's a very logical statement. I mean, think about it. It's a very logical statement. If the actual research was done on both sides, if they actually proved that did not make a difference, yada, yada, yada. But again, this is why we're here talking about this today, because it's not done. And most doctors are falling victim of that. Well, if A can't equal B, then it must not be true. It can't equal B. Therefore, why spend your money on organic produce and allocate funds if it's a big investment like it is for most people, because it's not proven? Don't even bother with your fish oil. You don't absorb it. Do you have a crystal ball and you can see into my body and you can actually tell that the nutrients isn't being absorbed and that it's not improving my health? No, you don't. You're making an assumption based off of data that comes from a corrupt system. Yeah, there's so many more points that I can't even remember what I want to talk about next. So let's move on to number 3, I think.
You did it already, because you naturally segued me to number 2, and you already naturally segued that's a word, me to number three. And let me read this. This is all about corporate capture. He's long criticized corporate capture, where regulatory bodies like the FDA are influenced by the industries they are supposed to regulate. He argues that this leads to compromised safety standards, public health outcomes, particularly in relation to vaccines and pharmaceuticals. When you are allowed to run your own tests and you're responsible for your own efficacy and your own guidelines, you're allowed to put out whatever outcomes that you want. And if, let's say, this is a vaccine and you put this out there and there are naysayers that say, hey, there are contraindications here. Hey, there are side effects. Hey, this hasn't been tested. They can then say, you don't care about your neighbor. You're not following the science and you're harming your whoever it is, the people around you. This will completely take away the ability for these companies to allow sicknesses to prevail without any real answers. What is the last chronic disease that we actually cured?
This is where I want that Jeopardy kind of song to start playing. Do, 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 do.
I really don't know. I want to say, I don't know the answer. I think the last major one was polio. You can check me on that. But we realized a long time ago there's a lot more money in treatment than there is in curing.
Exactly. I mean, with what you said earlier, them being the own arbiter of their own ethics, when they have a financial gain for the slippery and loose ethics, are you kidding me? Like, let me give you guys an example. As a former fat kid myself, the magnitude of what I'm saying, of what is happening with pharmaceutical companies being the own arbiter, being the own judge of their clean ethics and not letting their financial interests get involved. This would be similar to myself when I was an overweight kid, giving me a piece of cake and saying, here it is, but you can't eat it. Like, and just relying on that rather than putting the cake out of my vision, putting my cake somewhere where I can't see it, like setting me up for success. Like I want to eat that cake, you know? It's very similar to that situation because they have a financial interest and you're asking them to stay clean and just trusting them that they're doing it. Like, why would you do that? Why would you do that to me as a former fat kid? Now I'd be pissed, you know, that you did that to me. At the time, I'm just thinking about the cake, right? So I think that it's very stupid. It's very stupid the way it's designed, or it's very genius the way that it's designed for certain people that benefit. And unfortunately, for you guys watching this, you had the shit end of that deal. You've had it for over 100 years. And what's in front of you is the potential for real, actual change. It's happening. So it's not even potential anymore. I say potential because we just don't know how it's going to unravel. We don't know how it's going to unfold. I mean, this is an interesting question for you. Like, what do you think is the worst thing that can happen? I mean, Trump's elected. RFK is going to be appointed. It would have to be some pretty crazy circumstances for nothing to happen, right? I mean,
you have to remember that RFK, his father was assassinated. His uncle was assassinated. He's legally trained and he has been on the exact same mission since he's in his mid-20s. Short of someone kicking him out, I don't see a world where he doesn't go full flight, head first, tackling every single thing he possibly can. And let's actually go to number 4, because we haven't talked about food yet, and this is great. He's targeting the food industry, particularly additives like synthetic dyes, seed oils, which he believes to contribute to America's chronic disease epidemic. And he argues that these chemicals are allowed in foods due to weak regulatory oversight influenced by corporate interests. So one example that I have here, we have right now 11 chemicals on our United States banned food list. We have 11. Take a guess at how many Europe has.
Oh, I think like 3 or 4 when I saw, I'm not.
No, banned substances. Europe has 1,300 bad substances and we have 11. Why? Because in Europe, you have to prove it to be safe before it can be put in your food. And in America, it has to harm people by the thousands before they take it out. It's that simple. And it's not just that, it's neurodegeneration, it's neurological conditions like Parkinson's that these additives and food dyes lead to. And the public is, again, none the wiser. We're filling our kids up with this stuff every morning, every afternoon at school, after work. We're eating it before bedtime without any idea that this stuff is killing us. And it's in the numbers. This is the first time in human history where life expectancy went backwards, even with modern day advents of social progress or scientific progress. It could only be our food and our exposure, yet they've been trying to tell us, that this has all been in our minds or this has all been made up. And now we're finally getting representatives who are willing to take on the powers that be.
Yeah, again, it's just circles back to allowing financial interests to exist. There's just no scenario where you could prevent this from happening again. Let's say we clean house and fix everything. There just can't be financial interest when it comes to, you could argue for anything really, truthfully, but at least we're talking about healthcare. And in this sector, there just can't. And that's another conversation. How do we prevent it? I guess I'm getting ahead of myself, but yeah, that is the problem right now. When you look at you look at these processed foods and what they're allowed to put in, they're going to put it, they're companies. They want to make money, and they make money by making the food delicious and making it cheap. That's through the usage of toxic chemicals that their scientists are playing around with. And why would they use more safer, more expensive ingredients if it's not mandated? This is, again, right? It's a simple mandate, but who's going to get pissed off with that? Food companies. If food companies are pissed off and they're making less money, where are their pockets going? What kind of outflow on finances do they have, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just a domino effect. It kind of goes back to the research too. There's probably just not enough research being done. No, it's not probably. There is not enough research being done on the negative health effects of these additives to the food for them to make it unequivocal that nobody can argue that this shit needs to be removed. There's still that person, that medical doctor that can say, well, I reviewed the available data, and based off of the available data, I don't see there an issue with having these things consumed in moderation. That's my, attempt to mock a researcher who, damn well, because this has already happened, by the way, it's already happened multiple times that we know of, right? Where researchers are paid to flat out feed the interest, like the sugar, the whole aspect of sugar decades ago. And the known scientists, by the way, because of the whistleblowers that were caught red-handed for allowing their professional opinions to be altered due to financial interests. So if we've already caught people doing this before in the past, you really think it's not continuing to happen? It hasn't continued to happen since then. They've just gotten a lot better at it. You fall down, you fail to rob a bank once, and you learn how to do it better and not get caught. And unfortunately, I think that's just consistently ongoing thing.
Mm-hmm. One last question for you. If everything comes to fruition, God willing, and this all really does happen, of all the ways you tiptoe, all the ways you can't really express yourself like you want to and help people like you want to when you're speaking on camera, what is the one concept or one topic that you really think you're going to be excited to go all out on and speak freely on that will do the most to benefit your audience in the most amount of ways?
It's going to have to be something in the category of alternative therapies like fasting, and being able to not say they're 100% safe because the research needs to be done. And so that's going to start. But in the meantime, based off the data that we do have, not shunning against it. And fasting is just one of them. There's many various health affecting lifestyle interventions that are currently getting suppressed from a combination of it's probably dangerous or it's not worth your time. And we still need the research to be done and started. So I'm not saying now we can say it's the best path. Don't take your medications, right? No, I'm not saying that. But just evening the playing field and saying, okay, now we can look at this set of alternative lifestyle interventions and really give it more weight behind its potential use and at least allow the patient to make the choice. We can't prove that fasting will help to reverse your insulin resistance. But here's the downside. I don't see any, in most cases. versus alternative options to handle your insulin resistance, which right now, for the first time ever, we have GLP-1 medications. Why not do both if both also have an impact on insulin resistance? Every single day I talk to people and their doctors either said, don't fast, which is just hilarious to me because they told them it was dangerous, which again, there's no research that's proved that fasting with GLP-1s isn't dangerous. There's just no research to prove that it is dangerous. So there you go. Because of the lack of available data on both sides, as a physician, should you tell your patient it's dangerous? And we're not talking about diabetics. That's a whole other conversation. Still the way that they need to be, the way out is fasting for a diabetic, but that's definitely worth a safety concern. We're talking about non-diabetics here. We're talking about obese individuals because we don't have the concern about erratic blood sugar levels. What are you worried about? Why would you tell them they can't fast? You know, what is wrong with if you're really concerned about the individual, hypoglycemia, real conditions outside of diabetes? Well, then do it slow, do it very safely, give them guidance on how they can do it very, very slow and maintain safety. Why immediately eliminate something that does have a ton of data to show its efficacy in also helping with insulin resistance? Like, well, we know why, right? It's the current agenda and the narrative. And all that's about to shift. And so I think that would be what I'm most excited about, is just the appreciation and decrease in suppression for these alternative lifestyle interventions like fasting, like low carb, so that they can be utilized more often with less fear, with less concern, and then let the research come out to validate what I think is already basically fact at this point. But let's do the research. Let's see what it comes up with. Without an agenda behind the research, it can't be done by big pharma. The research has to be funded and performed by a neutral party. Can't be funded with somebody who wants to see it good either. It can't. And I don't know how they figure that out. That's not my job. But it needs to be done neutral party, and do the research. So I know we're out of time, but that's my 2 cents on that.
My entire adult life, the future of American healthcare has never looked brighter. Can't wait.
I know. Seriously. We'll keep you guys locked and loaded. We'll see you later.
All right.